What if the end of Season 4 wasn't an ending at all? What if it was the beginning of the end, the deep, silent breath before the final plunge? The gates are open, Vecna is wounded but alive, and Hawkins is bleeding into another dimension, its skies stained red, its ground choked with the dust of a dead world. We've seen the battles, we've mourned the losses, but the final moves of this cosmic chess game are yet to be played. We're about to dive into the darkest corners of fan theories and speculation, exploring the chilling possibilities that await us in the final chapter of Stranger Things. Before we descend, we gotta know, Team Steve, Jonathan, or Eddie? Drop it in the comments below, a final allegiance before the world falls apart. Now let's explore the roads that could lead to the apocalypse, or to a victory so costly it feels like a defeat. What if the most heroic sacrifice of Season 4 was not an end, but a dark and terrible beginning? We all saw it, we all felt it. Eddie Munson, the outcast king of the freaks, died a hero's death in the Upside Down, torn apart by Demobats, buying his new friends precious time. His story was a perfect, tragic arc of redemption. But what if, in the world of Stranger Things, death is not a period but a comma? What if Eddie Munson is destined to return for the final season, not as the lovable metalhead we knew, but as something far older, far more powerful, and infinitely more terrifying? The theory that Eddie will be resurrected as Kaz the Bloody-Handed, Vecna's legendary vampire lieutenant, is one of the most compelling and popular threads in the fandom. It's rooted not just in wishful thinking, but in deep Dungeons & Dragons lore, chilling foreshadowing, and the established rules of this twisted universe. This theory suggests that Eddie's sacrifice wasn't the closing of his book, but the price of admission to the final apocalyptic chapter, where he must become a monster to save the world from an even greater one. The evidence for Eddie's vampiric return is so strong it feels less like a theory and more like a prophecy waiting to be fulfilled. Let's start with the scripture of the Stranger Things universe, the Dungeons & Dragons Player's Handbook. The writers have consistently used D&D lore as a blueprint for their villains and their plots. The Demogorgon, the Mind Flayer, and Vecna himself are all pulled from the game. So, who is Kaz in D&D lore? Kaz the Bloody-Handed was Vecna's most trusted and powerful lieutenant. He was a human warrior who, through a pact with his Dark Master, became a vampire. He served Vecna faithfully for centuries, wielding his iconic sword and shield. But eventually Kaz, driven by his own ambition and the whispers of his sentient, evil sword, betrayed Vecna. In a legendary battle, it was Kaz who severed Vecna's hand and eye, leading to the Lich King's first major defeat. He is the ultimate traitor, the right-hand man who becomes the instrument of his master's downfall. Now let's overlay this blueprint onto Eddie Munson. The parallels are almost too perfect to be coincidental. Consider his death scene. He isn't shot, he isn't crushed. He is swarmed and bitten to death by demobats. In classic mythology, what happens when you're bitten by a vampire or its minions? You become one. The bites themselves could be the mechanism of transformation, infusing him with the corrupting energy of the Upside Down, making his body a perfect vessel for resurrection. Then there are his weapons. In his final, heroic stand, what does Eddie wield? A makeshift spear and a garbage can lid painted with a demonic figure, which he uses as a shield. Kaz is defined by his sword and shield. Eddie was armed with the symbolic precursors to his final form. And his tattoos, they are a roadmap to his destiny. On his arm he has a tattoo of a swarm of bats. On his chest he has a tattoo of a puppet master with strings, a clear visual metaphor for Vecna's control over his minions. He is literally branded with the iconography of his own future. The thematic evidence is even more powerful. his most metal concert ever, playing Metallica's Master of Puppets in the heart of the Upside Down, is more than just a cool moment. It's a prophecy. He is playing the theme song of his own future master, a declaration of his unwitting allegiance. He is the puppet who will eventually cut his own strings. Joseph Quinn, the actor who played Eddie, has even mentioned that he and the Duffer Brothers discussed the Kaz theory. While not a confirmation, it shows that this idea was present and acknowledged at the highest levels of the show's production. It's not just a fan theory, it's a narrative possibility that has been baked into the very DNA of the character from the beginning. Eddie's arc feels incomplete. He died a hero, but only to a handful of friends. The rest of Hawkins, the world he died for, believes he was a satanic murderer. His name is never cleared. Bringing him back as Kaz allows for the ultimate redemption. He would have to literally fight the monster he has become to prove the hero he always was, not just to his friends, but to himself. His sacrifice wouldn't be cheapened, it would be given a new, terrifying, and epic dimension. The corroborating evidence for the Kaz theory goes beyond D&D lore and into the very fabric of the show's storytelling. These are the subtle clues, the breadcrumbs left by the writers that point toward a monstrous resurrection. First, and most importantly, is the location of his body. Eddie died in the Upside Down. As far as we know, his body was left there, on the ground of Vecna's realm. This is a crucial detail. The Upside Down is not just a place of decay, it's a place of transformation. We've seen what it does to the environment, twisting and corrupting it. We've seen how it can infect a person like Will Byers and leave a permanent mark. What would happen to a dead body left to steep in that malevolent energy? It's the perfect incubator. Vecna, upon returning to his lair, wounded and furious, would be looking to rebuild his forces. He would need a new general, a new lieutenant to replace the failed Mind Flayer avatar. What better raw material than the corpse of the hero who dared to defy him? It would be a poetic, cruel act of dominance to take the symbol of the town's resistance and twist him into his most powerful slave. It's a classic villain move, and it fits Vecna's psychology perfectly. Then there's Dustin's role in all of this. His final scene with Eddie's uncle is one of the most heartbreaking moments in the series. He hands the man Eddie's guitar pick, a symbol of his friend's identity, and makes a promise. I'll never forget him. Dustin is now the keeper of Eddie's legacy. This sets up a powerful emotional conflict for Season 5. If Eddie returns as a mindless vampiric monster under Vecna's control, who will be the one to try and reach him? It will be Dustin. The final battle could hinge on Dustin's ability to break through Vecna's programming and remind Cass of the man he once was, Eddie Munson. The love between these two friends, a bond Vecna would dismiss as a weakness, could become the very weapon that defeats him. We also need to consider the show's history with fake-out deaths. Hopper's death at the end of Season 3 was a major cliffhanger that was reversed. While Eddie's death felt more final, the Duffer Brothers have shown they are willing to bring characters back from the brink if it serves the story. Bringing Eddie back not as his old self, but as a changed, monstrous version, would avoid cheapening his sacrifice while creating a wealth of new, compelling narrative opportunities. It's the perfect way to have their cake and eat it too. The emotional weight of the death remains, but the character gets to continue in a new, even more dramatic form. Finally, there's the simple matter of narrative balance. As we enter Season 5, the heroes are outgunned. Max is in a coma, the gates are open, and Vecna is healing. They need a game changer, an ace up their sleeve. A resurrected, superpowered Eddie, a being who understands the Upside Down because he is now a part of it, would be the ultimate wild card. He could be the inside man, the secret weapon they need to get close to an otherwise untouchable villain. So what if it's true? What are the implications for Season 5 if Eddie Munson claws his way back from the grave as Cass the Bloody-Handed? The ripple effects would be massive, completely reshaping the endgame of the series. First, it would introduce a deeply tragic and compelling antagonist for the first part of the season. Imagine the horror of the party, especially Dustin, when they first encounter this new creature. It looks like Eddie, but it moves with a predatory grace, its eyes filled with a cold, dead light. It's their friend turned into one of Vecna's puppets. The first major arc of the season could be the party's desperate attempt to fight and ultimately to save him. It wouldn't be a battle of brawn, but a battle for a soul. They would have to find a way to break Vecna's psychic chains and reawaken the consciousness of Eddie Munson trapped within the vampire's body. This creates an incredible internal conflict for the character of Eddie Cass. He would be a prisoner in his own form, forced to hunt his own friends, his mind a battlefield between Vecna's commands and his own fading humanity. His journey would be about reclaiming his soul from the ultimate puppet master. It's a classic Jekyll and Hyde story, remixed with 80s metal and supernatural horror. The successful rescue of Eddie would then pivot his role from antagonist to the party's most powerful and unpredictable ally. He would be a creature of the Upside Down, possessing supernatural strength, speed, and perhaps other vampiric abilities. More importantly, he would have a direct psychic link to Vecna and the hive mind. He would be their ultimate insider, able to anticipate Vecna's moves and understand his weaknesses in a way no one else could. He would be the monster they need to fight the bigger monster. This leads to the ultimate fulfillment of the D&D prophecy. The final, desperate plan to defeat Vecna might hinge entirely on Cass. He would be the only one who could get close enough to Vecna in his sanctum, pretending to be the loyal lieutenant. The climax of the series could be a direct parallel to the D&D lore. Cass, at the crucial moment, turns on his master, betraying him and striking the blow that allows Eleven and the others to win. Eddie's destiny would be rewritten. His death wasn't the heroic sacrifice, it was the catalyst for his true purpose. He had to die, be reborn as a monster, and walk through the darkest parts of himself to become the savior the world needed. It would be the ultimate vindication for the outcast. The boy who was hunted as a monster becomes a literal monster, only to save everyone. It's a powerful, poetic, and incredibly fitting end for the King of the Freaks, a final, epic guitar solo in the symphony of Stranger Things. Let's shift our focus from a hero's potential resurrection to a hero's potential fall. For 4 seasons, Will Byers has been the emotional core of the group, the sensitive soul, the ultimate victim. He was the boy who was taken, the boy who was possessed, the boy who could feel the cold. But what if his role as a victim was just a long, slow incubation? What if the piece of the Upside Down that was planted in him in Season 1 wasn't just a scar, but a seed waiting for the right moment to bloom into something terrible? The theory that Will Byers is destined to become the final villain of Stranger Things, a new Vecna, or the ultimate host for the darkness, is one of the most heartbreaking and narratively compelling possibilities for Season 5. It reframes his entire journey from a story of survival to a story of tragic, inevitable transformation. He's not the canary in the coal mine, he's the time bomb ticking at the center of the party. The evidence for Will's dark turn has been accumulating since the very beginning, but Season 4 brought it into sharp, terrifying focus. The most significant clue is Vecna's own stated purpose for taking Will back in 1983. In his grand monologue to Eleven, Vecna recounts his history, his creation of the Mind Flayer, and his discovery of the Gate. But he never explicitly says why he sent the Demogorgon to abduct Will. We, the audience, have always assumed it was a random act of a predator. But Vecna is a meticulous planner. Nothing he does is random. Some fans have noticed a chilling line in the script that was cut from the final show, where Vecna says he saw Will and took him to kill him, but then realized he was different and could be used. Even without this line, the implication is strong. Vecna chose Will for a reason. Why? Because he sensed something in him, a sensitivity, a creativity, a latent psychic potential that made him the perfect vessel. This is why he didn't just kill him. He began a long, slow process of cultivation. The possession in Season 2 wasn't just about using Will as a spy, it was an attempt at a full merger, an effort to fuse the consciousness of the Mind Flayer, and by extension, Vecna, with Will's own. While Joyce and the others managed to exercise the main entity, the show has repeatedly shown us that a piece of it remains. Will's true sight, the goosebumps on the back of his neck, is not just a form of supernatural PTSD. It's a dormant connection, a live wire back to the hive mind. No other character who has been to the Upside Down has this. Only Will. This suggests that the connection is not just a memory, but a permanent, biological alteration. He is part of the hive mind, even if he's a disconnected node. Then there's Will's painting in Season 4. On the surface, it's a touching, if manipulative, gesture to reassure his best friend. But let's look at the subtext. Will has always been a creator, a world builder. In D&D, he's the cleric. In his spare time, he draws and creates stories. His art has often been prophetic. In Season 2, his drawings mapped the tunnels under Hawkins. What is his Season 4 painting prophesying? It's a story of heroes defeating a dragon. But the true evidence is not in the image, but in the act of creation itself. Will is using his creativity to shape a narrative, to influence the emotions and actions of others. This creative, world-building impulse is the exact quality of being like Vecna, who literally shaped his own world, would prize in a host. Vecna isn't just looking for a body, he's looking for a co-creator, a mind that can help him imagine new horrors and make his corrupted world more perfect. Will isn't just a potential puppet, he's the perfect apprentice. The corroborating clues for Will's tragic destiny are woven into the quiet, emotional moments of his character arc. These are the subtle hints that suggest his journey is heading toward a dark, inevitable conclusion. Let's go all the way back to the first episode. In the opening D&D game, the party faces the Demogorgon. Mike, as Dungeon Master, declares it's Will's turn. Will has a choice: cast a protective spell or throw a fireball. He chooses to attack. The move fails and the Demogorgon gets him. This scene is a microcosm of his entire journey, a moment of choice that leads to his capture. This thematic connection to D&D is crucial. The kids named the villain Vecna after the game's infamous Lich. In the lore, Vecna was once a mortal man who craved power and became an undead sorcerer. What if the show's true Vecna, the one who rises at the end, isn't Henry Creel but Will Byers? It would be the ultimate tragic irony. The party has been fighting a monster named Vecna, all while their friend has been slowly, secretly transforming into him. The Duffer Brothers have been very vocal about Season 5 being a Will Byers season, promising that his journey will come full circle and be at the very center of the final narrative. This heavily implies a more active and likely much darker role than just being the group's monster detector. Coming full circle from being the first victim to becoming the final threat is a powerful and terrifying narrative arc. Then there's the persistent visual and emotional language of his isolation. Throughout Seasons 3 and 4, Will is portrayed as being out of sync with his friends. While they are moving on to new relationships and experiences, he is desperately trying to cling to the childhood that was stolen from him. This emotional isolation makes him vulnerable. It creates a festering wound of resentment and loneliness. His conversation with Mike in the van in Season 4 is the key to his entire psychology. He says, through tears, while pretending to talk about 11, "When you're different, sometimes you feel like a mistake." This single line connects him directly to Henry Creel. Henry's entire villainous origin story is rooted in his feeling of being different, of being superior to the broken people around him. While Will's feelings come from a place of love and pain, not malice, the core emotion is the same. Vecna preys on trauma, and Will is arguably the most profoundly traumatized character in the entire series. He is the perfect target for Vecna's final play, not to kill him, but to corrupt him, to convince him that the only way to stop feeling like a mistake is to embrace the power that makes him different. The implications of an evil Will arc for Season 5 are absolutely devastating and would elevate the series from a beloved adventure story into a genuine modern tragedy. It would fundamentally challenge the show's core theme, the power of friendship to overcome darkness. What happens when the darkness is wearing the face of your best friend? What happens when the final boss is a member of the party? This would create an impossible, heartbreaking conflict for the remaining heroes. They wouldn't be able to solve this problem with fire or a psychic blast from 11. The fight would be an emotional one, a desperate battle for the soul of their friend. Mike, in particular, would be at the epicenter of this tragedy. The guilt he already feels for neglecting Will would become an unbearable weight. He would be torn between his role as the party's leader and his love for his oldest friend. Could he bring himself to fight Will, let alone kill him? The entire party would fracture under the strain of such a choice. It also provides a chilling new context for Vecna's ultimate plan. Perhaps his goal isn't just to merge the dimensions. Perhaps his end game is to find a successor. He's been ruling the Upside Down alone for decades. He told 11 he wanted a partner. When she refused, he decided to make one. His entire war on Hawkins could be seen as a long, brutal audition process to find and forge the perfect host to carry on his legacy, or to become a vessel for his own consciousness if his physical form is destroyed. Will Byers, with his latent abilities and deep connection to the Upside Down, is the final candidate. The final battle, then, would not be to kill Vecna, but to stop him from completing his magnum opus, the creation of a new, more powerful version of himself in the body of Will Byers. This could lead to a truly dark ending. What if they can't save him? What if Will, tired of being the victim, tired of the pain, willingly embraces the power Vecna offers him? He could see it as the only way to protect the people he loves by becoming a god who can control the forces that threaten them. He could defeat Vecna only to take his place, becoming the new, lonely king of the Upside Down, a benevolent monster ruling over a dead world. This would be a Pyrrhic victory of the highest order. They save the world, but they lose their friend to the very darkness they fought to destroy. It's a haunting, emotionally resonant conclusion that would make Will Byers one of the most tragic figures in television history. Let's pull our focus back from the personal to the cosmic. We've been operating under a specific set of assumptions about the nature of the Upside Down, largely informed by Vecna's own narrative. We assume it's a parallel dimension, a dark mirror of our world. But what if that's a lie, or at least a misinterpretation of a much more terrifying truth? What if the Upside Down isn't another place at all, but another time? The theory that the Upside Down is actually Hawkins in a distant, post-apocalyptic future transforms the entire story from a supernatural horror into a grim, science fiction tragedy. In this version of events, the conflict isn't about closing a door between two neighboring worlds. It's about trying to stop a horrifying, predestined future from becoming reality. The kids aren't fighting an alien invasion, they're fighting a war against time itself. The primary evidence for this mind-bending theory lies in a re-examination of the physical state of the Upside Down. Yes, as Nancy discovered, it appears to be frozen on November 6, 1983. But look closer at its condition. It's not just a dark and dusty copy, it's a world in a state of terminal decay. The buildings are not only covered in alien-like vines and growths, but they are also crumbling, rusted, and dilapidated, as if they have been abandoned to the elements for centuries. The air is filled with floating spores, which could be interpreted as the radioactive or biological fallout from a cataclysmic event. It's a world that hasn't just been corrupted, it's a world that has died and is now rotting. If the Upside Down is the future, then the gates are not portals through space, but wormholes through time. Vecna's grand plan in Season 4, opening 4 gates to create a massive rift, wasn't just about letting monsters in. That event was the apocalypse. It was the cataclysm that over hundreds of years would transform Hawkins into the dead, spore-filled husk we know as the Upside Down. Vecna isn't opening a door to his home, he's hitting the fast-forward button on Hawkins' timeline, pulling the ruin of the future into the present. This theory provides an elegant explanation for many of the Upside Down's mysteries. The perfect geographical mirroring of the town makes complete sense if it's not a parallel world, but the exact same world at a different point in its timeline. The buyer's house is there because it is the buyer's house, just a future, rotted-out version. The strange, floating spores and toxic atmosphere could be the long-term environmental consequences of reality being torn apart. Even the creatures could be explained. The Demogorgons and Demodogs might not be alien life forms. They could be the grotesque, mutated descendants of Earth's own fauna, or even humans, hideously transformed over centuries by the raw, dimensional energy bleeding from the rifts. Vecna isn't unleashing an alien army. He's weaponizing the horrifying results of our own future, sending them back in time to ensure their own creation. It's a terrifying causal loop, a snake eating its own tail, where the future actively attacks the past to guarantee its own grim existence. Vecna, a being who claimed he could transcend time and space, would be the only one capable of orchestrating such a complex, temporal war. He's not just a general, he's a chronomancer, a master of time. His curse, where he torments his victims with visions of their past traumas, is a form of mental time travel. Why couldn't he apply the same principles on a physical, dimensional scale? The vision he shows Nancy of a future Hawkins, with red skies and giant monsters, wasn't just a threat of what he will do, it was a memory. He was showing her the future he is from, or at least the future he is trying to make permanent. The subtle, corroborating clues that support the Upside Down as the future theory are scattered throughout the series, hiding in plain sight. Let's reconsider the date. November 6, 1983. In the Vecna created it theory, this is the day he got the psychic blueprint. But in the future theory, that date is even more significant. It was the day of the first major, albeit temporary, breach. In the history of the apocalyptic future, that date would be remembered as Day Zero. It was the moment the timeline was first corrupted, the first crack in the dam. So when someone from the past, like Will, is pulled into that future timeline, the future world's present is still psychically and temporally defined by that original sin. The future is literally haunted by its own past. Then there's the electricity. The party's first major breakthrough in Season 1 was realizing they could communicate with Will through lights. This is often explained as a simple interaction between two parallel dimensions. But what if it's a temporal echo? A phenomenon where the energy of the past can still briefly manifest in the dead future. and vice versa. It's not two places communicating, it's two moments in the same timeline, linked by a scar in reality. The constant red lightning that storms in the upside-down sky could be a perpetual atmospheric wound, a scar left over from the original cataclysm that never heals. It's the visual representation of a broken timeline. This theory also recontextualizes Vecna's motivations. He's not just a nihilist who wants to destroy the world out of spite. In this scenario, he becomes a figure of tragic, cosmic determinism. Perhaps when he was cast out by 11, he was thrown forward in time, arriving in the already dead future of Hawkins. He saw the end result, the quiet, lifeless world he had always dreamed of. His goal, then, is not to destroy the world, but to ensure that this specific future comes to pass. He is an agent of destiny, a servant of a pre-written apocalypse. All his actions are about closing the loop, making sure that history unfolds exactly as it needs to for his dead utopia to be born. It paints him as a far more complex and terrifying villain. He's not just fighting against a group of kids, he's fighting against the possibility of a different future. He's a temporal terrorist, and his bomb has already gone off. He's just making sure the fallout spreads correctly. This adds another chilling layer to his choice of victims. He chooses people with trauma. Perhaps this is not just because they are easier to break, but because their intense emotional pain creates a specific kind of psychic resonance that is more effective at weakening the barrier between timelines. He's using human suffering as a temporal solvent, dissolving the walls between the present and the preordained tragic future. If the upside down is the future theory is true, it completely changes the stakes and the genre of the final season. The fight is no longer about stopping a dimensional invasion, it's about preventing a prophecy. It becomes a story about fate, free will, and whether it's possible to change a future that has, in a sense, already happened. Every action the characters take could be another step down the path that leads directly to the ruin they're trying to prevent. It's a classic time travel conundrum that would make every victory feel precarious and every loss feel like the hand of fate tightening its grip. This makes Vecna an almost unbeatable antagonist. He's not just powerful, he has the ultimate strategic advantage. He knows how he wins because he's already been to the finish line. He's not just predicting their moves, he's remembering them. The party is playing a game of checkers while he is playing four-dimensional chess across the entire timeline of Hawkins. How do you possibly defeat an enemy who has already seen the end of the game? It raises the terrifying possibility that the only way to win is to do something so radical, so unpredictable, that it shatters the established causal loop entirely. This could point towards a massive, reality-altering sacrifice. Someone might have to remove themselves from the timeline, past, present, and future, to create a paradox that Vecna could never have anticipated. The solution might not be to close the gates, but to somehow heal the timeline itself. This could require a new evolution of Eleven's powers. We've seen her move through space and through memory, the void. Could she learn to move through time? Could the final confrontation take place not in 1986, but at a key fulcrum point in the past, perhaps even the moment she first banishes Henry Creel, or in the far future? The climax could involve a time heist, an attempt to rewrite history at its source. Finally, this theory makes the story profoundly tragic. The shadowy, terrifying world of the Upside Down is not some alien other. It is us. It is our world after we have lost. Every time the characters venture into that dead place, they are walking through the graveyard of their own hopes and dreams. They are seeing firsthand the consequences of their failure. The psychological weight of that knowledge would be almost unbearable. It's one thing to fight a monster from another world. It's another thing entirely to fight against your own tombstone. The battle for Hawkins becomes a desperate existential struggle for the very concept of hope in a world that seems destined for nothing but ash and dust. Let's introduce one final wild card theory into the mix. We have accepted Vecna's story. He told Eleven that he found the particles of the Upside Down and shaped them to his will, creating the Mind Flayer as an extension of himself. But Vecna is the ultimate narcissist. He's a liar and a manipulator. He sees himself as a god. Why should we believe him? What if the master of puppets is himself a puppet on a much larger, much older, and much more alien string? What if the Mind Flayer is not his creation, but a primordial entity that he found, and perhaps foolishly, thought he could control? This theory suggests that Vecna is not the final boss, but merely the final boss's most powerful general. The evidence for this theory hinges on one key idea. Vecna is an unreliable narrator. His entire monologue to Eleven in Season 4 is a self-aggrandizing story designed to intimidate her and justify his own actions. He paints himself as the sole architect of everything, the god of this dark dimension. But is he powerful enough to create a being like the Mind Flayer? Think about the scale of what we saw in Seasons 2 and 3. The Shadow Monster was a colossal being that towered over the entire town, a creature of pure elemental storm and shadow. It felt ancient, Lovecraftian. Vecna, for all his immense psychic power, is still, at his core, a man. Could one man's mind, however twisted, truly create a being of that magnitude from dust? Or is it more likely that he stumbled upon a pre-existing consciousness, a sleeping god, in the chaotic dimension he was banished to? The D&D lore itself supports this. Mind Flayers, or Illithids, are an ancient, hive-minded race of cosmic horrors with their own vast empire and history. They are not the creation of a single wizard. It's possible that the Duffer brothers are using a similar concept here. Vecna, the powerful psychic, arrived in a dimension that was already the home of this ancient, formless entity. He saw the spider-like shape of the hive mind, and it resonated with his own childhood obsession. He didn't create it, he connected with it. He formed a symbiotic, or perhaps parasitic, relationship with it. He became its brain, its conduit, its way of focusing its immense but chaotic power. He gave the ancient storm a voice and a purpose, and in return, it gave him an army and a kingdom. This recontextualizes his actions. He's not just a nihilist bent on destruction. He's the high priest of a dark god, carrying out its will to consume and assimilate other worlds. His philosophy and the Mind Flayer's instincts just happen to align perfectly. The corroborating evidence lies in the apparent inconsistencies between the Mind Flayer's behavior in earlier seasons and Vecna's claims in Season 4. In Season 2, the Mind Flayer appears as a vast, unknowable storm, a force of nature. In Season 3, its goal, acting through the Meat Flayer, is to build a body and specifically to kill and assimilate 11, seeing her as a threat to its existence. This feels instinctual. It's the behavior of a cosmic predator trying to eliminate another predator. While this aligns with Vecna's hatred of 11, it could also be interpreted as the Mind Flayer's own independent self-preservation instinct. Vecna might be the one directing the army, but the underlying motivation to consume, to grow, to eliminate threats could be the Mind Flayer's own. Think about the visual difference. The shadow monster of Season 2 is a swirling vortex of black particles. The Upside Down in Season 4, under Vecna's direct control, is a world of vines, roots, and biological structures. This could suggest two different, though related, sources of power. The Mind Flayer is the elemental storm, the raw chaos. Vecna is the biological corruption, the one who gives that chaos a more structured terrestrial form. He is the gardener, but the soil itself is an ancient, malevolent entity. This also helps to explain the sheer scale of the hive mind. How could Vecna, from his lair in the Upside Down, perfectly control dozens of flayed-in Hawkins and a giant meat monster all at the same time? A direct psychic link would be incredibly taxing, even for him. But if he is merely the central node, the queen bee, connected to a much larger pre-existing hive consciousness, it makes more sense. He's not micromanaging every single puppet. He's just broadcasting his intent to the hive, and the hive responds. The Mind Flayer isn't his puppet, it's his symbiotic partner and his army. This makes his potential defeat in Season 5 much more complicated. The implications of this theory are staggering. It means that even if the party succeeds in killing Vecna, the war might not be over. They would have simply killed the general, leaving the ancient, angry god that he served without a master. This could lead to a final, terrifying twist. The party celebrates their victory over Vecna, only to see the gates remain open. The red sky doesn't clear, and from the rifts, the true Mind Flayer emerges, no longer bound by Vecna's human-like intelligence and strategy, but as a being of pure, cosmic, and chaotic hunger. It would be a level up for the final boss at the very last moment. This ancient entity, now free, would be looking for a new brain, a new psychic anchor to give it focus. And who are the most powerful psychics left on the board? 11, and potentially a newly freed Will Byers. The true final battle could be a desperate struggle to prevent the Mind Flayer from claiming a new, more powerful host. Imagine a scenario where a victorious but exhausted 11 has to fight off the psychic tendrils of this ancient being trying to possess her. Or worse, the Mind Flayer, sensing the lingering connection in Will, tries to make him its new Vecna. This would tie the evil Will theory and this original Mind Flayer theory together in the most horrifying way. Will's final struggle wouldn't be against the ghost of Henry Creel, but against a cosmic parasite trying to turn him into its new puppet king. It raises the stakes for the final season to a truly cosmic, Lovecraftian scale. The enemy isn't just a man who became a monster, it's a universe-ending intelligence that has existed for eons. It also makes Vecna a more tragic, if no less evil, figure. He was a boy who, in his quest for ultimate control, made a deal with a power he could never truly comprehend, becoming a slave in the very moment he thought he had become a god. His defeat wouldn't be the end of the story, but merely the prologue to the real one. So we stand before a sprawling, terrifying detective board of possibilities for the final season. 4 major theories, 4 potential paths to the end, each one twisting the story in a new and horrifying direction. We have the Cass Eddy theory, a story of monstrous redemption. We have the evil Will theory, a story of tragic corruption. We have the time loop theory, a mind-bending sci-fi tragedy. And we have the original Mind Flayer theory, a tale of cosmic horror. On the surface, they might seem to contradict each other, but what if they don't? What if we can connect these threads, weaving them together into a single, unified theory for the grand finale of Stranger Things? Let's try to build that narrative. The story of Season 5 could begin with the party reeling from the events of the finale. Hawkins is a disaster zone. Max is in a coma. Vecna is healing. Their first priority is to find a way to fight back. In their desperation, they discover the horrifying truth of the time loop theory. The Upside Down is Hawkins' predestined apocalyptic future, and Vecna's plan is a causal loop designed to make that future inevitable. They realize they aren't just fighting a monster, they are fighting fate itself. This raises the stakes to an impossible level. How do you stop a future that's already written? While they grapple with this, Vecna initiates his endgame. His goal is not just to merge the dimensions, but to secure his legacy by finding a successor, a new host for his power, or for the ancient Mind Flayer entity he serves. His target, as the evil will theory suggests, is Will Byers. He begins to actively corrupt Will, using their shared connection, preying on Will's trauma and isolation, tempting him with the power to end his pain and protect his friends. The central conflict of the season becomes a two-front war, a physical war against the encroaching apocalypse, and an emotional psychic war for the soul of Will Byers. The party is losing. The loop feels unbreakable. Will is slipping away. They need a miracle. They need a wild card. This is where the other theories crash into the narrative. In the midst of their struggle, a new player emerges on the board, a terrifying vampiric creature that looks like Eddie Munson. Vecna, in his arrogance, has resurrected his fallen enemy to serve as his mindless general, his Kaz. The party, especially Dustin, is horrified. They are forced to fight their own friend. This becomes a crucial subplot, the desperate attempt to break Vecna's control and reawaken the real Eddie. Through a combination of music, memory, and the unbreakable bond of friendship, they succeed. They free Eddie, and in doing so, they gain their miracle. Cass Eddie, now a creature of the Upside Down but with the heart of a hero, becomes their secret weapon. He has an inside understanding of Vecna's mind and the nature of the temporal loop. He is the paradox, the one piece on the board that Vecna's predestined future couldn't account for. With Eddie's help, they devise a final, insane plan. It's a multi-pronged assault designed to break the loop and sever Vecna's connection to Will and the ancient Mind Flayer entity. The climax becomes a breathtaking symphony of action and emotion. Hopper, Joyce, and the ground team fight a losing battle against the mutated horrors of the future on the streets of a dying Hawkins. Cass Eddie, the ultimate mole, leads a team into the heart of the Upside Down to destroy whatever temporal anchor is holding the loop in place. And Eleven, in her most powerful act yet, dives into Will's corrupted mind to engage in a final psychic battle against Vecna for his soul. The theories now all work in concert. The time loop provides the epic, sci-fi stakes. The evil will arc provides the tragic, emotional core. And the Cass Eddie theory provides the unexpected key to victory, the heroic deus ex machina, born from sacrifice. And what of the original Mind Flayer? That becomes the final terrifying twist. As the party succeeds, as Vecna is defeated and the loop is shattered, they realize the ancient godlike entity is now untethered, a mindless force of cosmic hunger looking for a new brain. The final moments of the series could be a desperate, last-ditch effort to contain this new, even greater threat, perhaps by trapping it in the collapsing pocket of the future timeline, or by one of the characters making the ultimate sacrifice to become its eternal jailer. This unified theory allows for every major fan speculation to have its place, building a final season that is epic, tragic, heroic, and horrifying in equal measure. It's a conclusion that honors every character's journey and brings every narrative thread to a spectacular, heartbreaking close. So let's step back and look at the beautiful, terrifying tapestry these theories weave. We see a final season that transcends simple monster fighting and becomes a complex story about fate, sacrifice, and the very nature of heroism. The time loop theory provides the grand, overarching threat, turning the fight for Hawkins into a fight to save reality from a predetermined, tragic fate. It's the ultimate race against the clock, where the clock itself is the enemy. Within this epic framework, we have the deeply personal tragedy of the evil will theory. This isn't just a story about saving the world, it's a story about saving a friend from the darkest parts of himself, about a group of people refusing to give up on one of their own, even as he becomes the vessel for their destruction. It's the beating, broken heart of the final season. But in the face of this overwhelming darkness, both cosmic and personal, we have the flicker of hope provided by the Kaz-Eddy theory. It's a testament to the show's core theme, that even in the darkest of times, even when you have been twisted into a monster, the bonds of love and friendship can pull you back into the light. Eddie's return is not just a cool fan service moment, it's the thematic counter-argument to Vecna's nihilism. It's proof that humanity, in all its messy, emotional glory, is a force more powerful than any monster. And finally, the original Mind Flayer theory adds a layer of cosmic, Lovecraftian horror that elevates the entire narrative. It suggests that the problems of humanity are both deeply personal and impossibly vast. The final enemy is not just one man's rage, but the ancient, amoral hunger of the universe itself. Comparing them, we see how they complement each other. The character-driven theories of Will and Eddie provide the emotional stakes, the reason for us to care about the larger, more abstract threat of the time loop and the Mind Flayer. Without the potential fall of Will and the potential redemption of Eddie, the fight against a temporal paradox would be a sterile, intellectual exercise. But without the grand cosmic stakes, the personal stories might not feel epic enough for the conclusion of a saga this large. Together they create a perfect balance of heart and horror, of personal tragedy and epic spectacle. It's a combination that promises a final season that is not only satisfying, but also emotionally resonant and unforgettable, a final, fitting testament to the strange and wonderful world of Hawkins. The journey through the speculative futures of Stranger Things leaves us in a place of thrilling, terrifying anticipation. The board is set for a final game that is far more complex and heartbreaking than we ever imagined. It's a game played across time, within the fragile landscape of the human mind, with the souls of our heroes as the prize. The theories of a resurrected vampiric Eddie, a tragically corrupted Will, a self-fulfilling apocalyptic timeline, and a cosmic god pulling the strings all point to a single unifying truth. The final victory will be anything but simple. It will demand sacrifices we are not prepared for, and force our heroes to confront the monsters in the world and within themselves. The story of Stranger Things has always been a love letter to the outcasts, a testament to the idea that the bonds of friendship, forged in the basements and arcades of a small town, can be strong enough to hold back the darkness. But as the final battle looms, a battle against fate itself, the ultimate question is not whether they can win. It is what they will have to become in order to do so. After the last monster has turned to dust and the final gate has closed, what if the greatest horror is not what they fought, but the pieces of themselves they had to leave behind in the dark?